Hi there, Amores here. Today we are going to see Windows 95 running on two very different configurations. First, we are going back to 1995 to pick an AMD 486 CPU and a PCI Socket 3 motherboard. The installation drive will be this Transcend Industrial 1GB IDE flash module. Then we are going to use the very same Windows 95 drive on an Intel 13th Gen configuration just to see what happens. So let's start with our 486 setup, which in 1995 was the most common configuration for a Windows 95 computer.
We've got two identical systems.
All right.
486, 33, 8 megabytes.
My 486 CPU has a dead fan, but this is not exactly a problem since a fan is not actually required for this exact AMD DX4 100 model. Just a heatsink would be fine, but I decided to replace the dead fan anyway. Mostly because the 80 power source is surprisingly quiet. I want to see some moving parts just to know for sure when the computer is on. Let's not forget that a Socket 3 motherboard will let you mount the CPU in the wrong way, so always double check before installing. By the way, this is not a high-end PC for $995, with one notable exception. If we analyze this ad from September 1995 at $32 per megabyte, 128 megs would have increased the cost of this computer with about $4,000, which obviously made no sense as the CPU itself was only about $200. The IDE flash module that I'm using is not exactly fast compared to a modern SSD, but scores very high in benchmarks. Compared to a classic hard drive like this Maxtor manufactured in 1998, which scores 196, the IDE flash module score was about 4,000, so it is fast. And oh, the video card. I started the setup with an S3 Verge video card, but I upgraded to this Radeon 9000 series from 2004 just to get a better capture quality. Meanwhile, I downgraded to 64 megs of RAM. One of the sticks was kind of bad. Anyway, 64 megs is still a ridiculous amount of RAM for a 486. Now let's install Windows 95. I think we are ready.
I know a guy who once actually wore a pajama top to work, and I think he thought it was a shirt. That was you, Bill, wasn't it?
This is the very first edition of Windows 95, also called the Windows 95A. It was launched in the summer of 1995. And since we are using 1995 hardware like the CPU and the motherboard, everything is compatible. The installation just works. There is no need for any workaround. We simply type setup and we are installing Windows. And since I'm using this IDE flash module, the installation takes about 12 minutes, which is extremely good for a 486 machine. Now let's install the video drivers and let's move on. Well, the drivers are working. Now we have a very nice resolution and some very bad looking icons. And since this card is not officially supported in the Windows 95, you may think this is a driver related issue. Actually, it's not. Let's not forget that we are using at this point 1995, Windows 95, basically with no updates. But once we are done with installing Internet Explorer 5.5, the icons are looking sharp and the overall software compatibility is greatly enhanced. In fact, with this update only, now we are ready to run the latest edition of Hardware Info, which was launched a few months ago. And as you can see, this is a 32-bit software that runs in Windows 95A, launched in 1995, but with some core updates from mainly from DirectX and Internet Explorer 5.5. If you are interested in more 486 action, like installing a networking card and going online, there will be a detailed video about this. Also, I'm going to test some games because there are many games that can be enjoyed on a 486. One notable mention is Chasm, released in 1997. It's a Quake style FPS. And as you can see, it's totally playable on this configuration. In the same time, Half-Life, a game released just 1 year later, is not exactly playable.
Hey, Mr. Freeman, I had a bunch of messages for you, but we had a system crash about 20 minutes ago, and I'm still trying to find my files. So just one of those days, I guess. Thanks for having.
Now, let's see how Windows 95 can handle new hardware like this Intel 13 Gen Core i3 CPU launched in 2023. Having a socket 1700 motherboard with a classic PCI slot makes things easier. I can plug directly my PCI to IDE and SATA adapter. But will be this tiny IDE drive bootable? Well, as long as the PCI adapter gets recognized, it shouldn't matter what type of drive we use. And let's see. Yes, parallel master transcend our drive is recognized and starting Windows 95. Well, not enough extended memory available to run Windows. This is totally expected. We are going from 64 megs to 16 gigabytes. So let's edit system ini file, which resides in the Windows folder. And at this section 386 enhanced, we add this line max fizz page equals 10,000. Now Windows will take in consideration only 256 megs. We can go for more RAM using the patch mem by Rudolf Low. But in order to run Windows 95 or any Windows 9X OS, we have to bypass the next error, which is the vcache error. This error is caused by the CSM module inside the AMD BIOSes released for new hardware. Basically, anything that's newer than 2020 will require a tiny patch called crackfix to be installed in the AutoExec bot. And for this specific task, I use a unit button to create a bootable stick. Unit button will create a B drive with the contents of the stick, and I copied there the crack fix. This is the tiny patch I was talking. So we need to run crack fix with the AutoExec bot. So we just type the path to the crack fix there, and that's enough. Next time the crack fix will be loaded, and let's restart. Now we should get another error. This is the end this error. Let's see. And starting Windows 95, not enough extended memory again. Well, this means that we have a problem with the HiMemSys. HiMemSys should recognize what type of computer we have. With the 4086 hardware, was no problem. But let's add the switch M1 to tell HiMemSys that we have a standard IBM PC computer. And let's restart one more time. And now starting. And yes, this is the end this error. And this is caused by CPU speed. This error is specific to Windows 95 family and Windows 98 first edition, and is caused by a CPU with a speed greater than 2.1 gigahertz. The good news is that we can easily fix this error using this Fix95 CPU patch, which must be loaded into a bootable stick. I use unit booting again, and now I booted from the USB stick, and we have to let the patch do its thing, and at the next restart, we should have no CPU speed issues at all. And let's see, Windows is loading. And yes, mission accomplished. We passed all the errors and we can finally see the desktop or not your display adapter. Well, this is a Windows error which can be easily fixed. Welcome to Windows 95. Add new hardware wizard. Let's run it. And let's see, communication port, printer port, standard PS2 port. Well, there are no unknown devices. This means we have to add the PCI bus manually. This is a very important step, or else we cannot install any drivers. I'm still using the same ATI PCI video card with the help of this PCI Express to PCI adapter. The drivers were installed in the 486 configuration. They were working, but now Windows 95 doesn't know anything about PCI bus of this Intel Raptor Lake configuration, so we have to install the PCI bus. This was not the case with the 4086 configuration. Well, installing the PCI bus is not a big deal, and we know when the PCI bus needs to be installed by looking in the device manager, and if there is no unknown device, there we have to install the PCI bus. So we go to add new hardware wizard, system devices, we select PCI bus, and at this point we have two options. We go with the Windows default driver for system devices like a PCI to ISA bridge or PCI bridge, and we select do not install driver for other devices. Or if we have drivers, we can provide them now, but I prefer to not install any driver and sort them out later. Now let me show you a quick tour of Windows 95 perfectly running on this Intel 13th Gen CPU and this Asus business motherboard. By the way, we can use the onboard SATA to boot Windows 95. We don't actually need this IDE drive, and that's I'm gonna do. I will remove this PCI to SATA adapter and put a sound card in that classic PCI slot because for a full Windows 95 experience, we need sound. Now let's use hardware info one more time and take a quick look at this configuration. This Asus motherboard has an updated BIOS which is compatible with Intel 14th Gen CPUs. So it's only a matter of swapping the CPU to get Windows 95 running on the latest Intel hardware. I just don't have any 14th Gen CPU right now. Now let's end the video with a game, and since I have this Radeon 9200 Pro GPU, let's test its direct 3D capabilities with more demanding game like Need for Speed Porsche. that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Please leave comments. See you next time.